Hello, everyone. It's so good to see all of your faces. Again, day 11. What a ride. Here we are. Like Bridget said, I'm Jack Faria. Pronouns are he, they. I am the genre queer and shorts programmer for Milwaukee Film. I'll have us all introduce ourselves along with what you're looking forward to. Very open-ended.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm Angela Madsen-Minax. I make movies and visual art and teach at a college, and I'm a juror here. And I'm really looking forward to sleeping in my own bed tonight. That's all.
Hey, y'all. I'm Luke Willis, and I'm the director of a film called Ladylike, starring Lady Camden. And what am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to seeing my little puppy Tommy tonight. Yeah, I know.
Hi, my name is Sav Rogers. I'm the director of Chasing Amy, which plays here tonight. Thanks. I'm also the executive director of the Transgender Film Center, a 501c3 nonprofit that connects trans-made stories with audiences around the world. And I am looking forward to exploring Milwaukee because I've never been here before. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yay. Hi, I'm Andrea Wilson-Mirza. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a producer. We have a film here called The Queen of My Dreams, which is screening right this second. I also work in a few different roles in advocacy in the industry. I work with women in film in Los Angeles, and also I'm consulting for GLAAD on a number of projects as well. So very happy to be here. And I'm looking forward to chatting with y'all. This is really sweet. Thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Fazia Mirza. I'm the writer and director of The Queen of My Dreams. It's playing right now. It's one of the centerpiece films here. We're excited that it's had such a journey and now to be here. We've had some fun in Milwaukee. I am really excited for a ceasefire and a liberation for the Palestinian people.
Yes. All right, we'll go into a heavy, open-ended question. What does it mean to you to be a queer filmmaker in 2024? I know that's not an easy question at all, but we'll go into it.
Oh.
Yeah?
I mean, here we go. I don't know. I mean, I haven't been a filmmaker for 20 years. So this is my directorial feature debut. I think, having come up in the indie space, I am very used to being scrappy and DIY. And I think the thing I'm thinking a lot about is even when we live in Los Angeles, but even working in Hollywood, it's not like suddenly you're like, and now you don't have to be scrappy anymore. Here, you have arrived. It's just kind of a pyramid scheme, So it's like, oh, okay, now there's all this other work to do. And there's always something that people are like, the next thing is harder than the thing you just did. And I say that more as a thing that helps me stay grounded, and it's very freeing to know that the system exists so that I don't get disappointed by it or controlled by it. I can sort of work inside and outside of it. I'm thinking about new distribution models that have to exist for our features. I'm thinking about having 20 projects at once because they don't all go, and sometimes they fall apart. And so in order to avoid that disappointment of one not going, you have to have many irons on the fire. That's a phrase, right? And I'm also thinking that, as much as it's a really tough time given the strikes that happened and the ongoing war that is clearly impacting every industry in the world, I'm holding hope because without that, what are we even doing? And that's why we come to film festivals. It's why we engage in our communities, because I think that is where we can find, I'm inspired by other filmmakers or people, running film festivals and programming film festivals and folks coming to panels. And it's so great to be in a college town, and I'm like, yes, y'all are the future. So that's, was that an answer? I don't even remember the question.
Great. Yeah.
It's, yeah, so there's a lot that's kind of in that, that is kind of where my mind is what I'm thinking about in terms of what being a filmmaker means in 2024.
Does anyone else have strong thoughts about that? I don't want to force anyone to answer a question that they don't have an answer for.
I have one quick thought, just coming off of that, which is like, as a queer filmmaker in 2024, like I am investing in my community. Like I'm not just investing in my own projects and out like pounding the streets and trying to raise money for my own projects. I'm really thinking about what we're building together, because like to Fazia's point, like there's no way like up and out and forward alone. Like we really need to be in deep collaboration with each other and sharing our resources and sharing our access and sharing the space that we have. So that's what I'm thinking about in 2024 of how to get to the next thing is together.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about money. It's come up, money and funding for a bit. None of us here yet have $10 million from Netflix to go make our next project. Let's talk about the struggles of finances, or how did you find funding for your latest project? Open to anyone that feels strongly.
Yeah, I can talk for a second about how we were able to kind of build credibility for Chasing Amy. So for context, Chasing Amy is a documentary that explores my coming of age against the backdrop of Kevin Smith's 1997 cult classic, Chasing Amy. If you've seen Chasing Amy, you know, great, but you can watch the movie without having seen it. And for us, that was like it was a big uphill struggle on like, why this film, why now? Because it seems so niche in premise. Which people say niche like it's a dirty word in in Hollywood sometimes, but I think the more specific a story is, the more universal it can feel, because it feels more lived in and more true. I think things that try to be for everybody most of the time end up being for nobody. And so one of the ways that we were able to kind of strategically fundraise was because we had gotten the story out there in a different way. And this is not universal in that everybody should go give a TED Talk. That's not what that means. But I was able to give a TED Talk, and it gave the film credibility because I was able to describe what the film was in about 8 minutes, talking about my personal story. There are a number of ways to get your story out there that you can use other people's credibility as an institution to benefit yourself and your filmmaking team as a storyteller. So some people, you know, they'll go on NPR, they'll go on This American Life. Lulu Wang did that with The Farewell. Mike Birbiglia did that with Sleepwalk with Me. And if you don't have institutional connections, you know, you can forge ways in, you can make connections with people who are able to provide like an introduction to somebody. But if you can find a unique way to get your story out there, whether it's a podcast, whether it's, you know, telling it in a different medium first, or even a proof of concept short, that can be helpful. And for us, we didn't have to go out and fundraise except for raising, you know, like $75,000 in grants, because every one of our private investors approached us because they saw the TED Talk and they wanted to see if they could participate in the documentary. That is highly unusual. However, it just goes to show, like, if you can tell your story in a compelling way, in a way that's digestible for people to understand who might not even be attached to the film industry, it can set you apart. That's just my path to finding funding. The rest of it's all really hard still, because you have to convince people all the time that you can do the job that you've proven before that you can do. So if anybody wants to rap about that afterwards, happy to talk. But that's something that worked for us.
Okay. So I'm a little bit anti-industry, and so not that I think there's not value there, but I do think we put a lot of pressure and weight into the idea of legitimacy and like the fact that the concept that you need to kind of be rendered legitimate in the eyes of someone else before you can make the thing you want to make. And I don't actually think that's true, especially because cinema is so dependent on the idea of storytelling, as you said. Like, having a compelling story doesn't have anything to do with money, actually. And I've seen amazing films being made on phones. And, like, it's just, I think sometimes money is actually an issue of imagination and not an issue of money. I've been making films for 20 years, and the first film I made was not good. They never are. But, like... that doesn't mean that I wasn't fully invested and dedicated into it and showing it. And when it didn't get into a lot of places because I didn't have any of those access points or things that rendered me legitimate to the industry. Legitimate. Same word.
That word, legitimate.
Legitimate. Legible and legitimate. But like, I didn't have any of those things because I didn't have any of those access points, and so my film didn't get into a lot of film festivals because those access points are sort of what open you up to the film festival world. And so I booked a tour for my film, and I played it at colleges all over the U.S. and made hella more money than I would have ever made at film festivals. And it spoke to the audiences I wanted to speak to, and I was able to be there with it and talk about it. I played it in basements. I played it in like punk venues.
John Waters.
And I just think there's like so many, like, this is just one universe for like making a movie and putting a movie out there, but there's like so many universes for making a movie and putting it out there. And I think people also really underestimate their skill sets. They think like, oh, I need to find an editor, and it's like, get a bootleg of iMovie or whatever the hell the kids use now. I don't know. Like, it's not, I mean, again, your first film will always suck, no matter what. So like, just, I don't know. I feel like I'm sort of like Midwestern bootstrapping it a little bit here, but I'm just like, just do the thing. Like, what's the problem? I don't know.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think this is also touching on what Fazia said earlier, is that, you know, I think when you're on one side of the film, you're like, oh, I need the grants and I need the legitimacy and I need the legitimableness, and like it is a distraction from actually making the movie. And there is some sort of like, I think, as you said, every fundraising strategy is kind of a little bit different for every project, and it's all and I think that's the same with the distribution strategy. It can be very different. It doesn't have to be the things that you think that you see externally you're supposed to do. And really, to make a film, you just have to be hard-headed and unshakable and determined within yourself and say, okay, I don't have 10 grand for the music supervision, so I'm gonna go out and figure it out myself. I'm gonna call my friend. I'm gonna I'm gonna do it myself and figure it out. And then along the way, once people see that you're real, it's kind of interesting. It's like a build it and they will come moment. Like, once they see you're real and that you're doing it no matter what, it's like people then start to come up and be like, okay, we'll help you out too. Like, we'll help you get there. We see what you're doing. We see that you're determined. We see that you have vision. Yeah, I guess vision and determination is sort of the key thing, and then everything else sort of, you just have to find your way with that hard-headedness.
Are there filmmakers in the room? Okay. I mean, I think that that step in and of itself is, you are a filmmaker, right? Like, just like, when I came out, I was like, I'm queer and I'm Muslim, and people are like, no, you're not, and I'm like, yes, bitch, I am. And so I think there's also something to that, the legitimacy or the legitimableness is all sort of, it has to be internal, because it is part of the self-love. It is part of the thing that always has to be there. And it also is the thing that when you have nothing and you're making and creating, but then when you have everything and you're making and creating, that groundedness of self-love is the thing that allows us to thrive, like, at the end of the day, because when things fall apart, you still have you. And you still have the things outside of the business that are real and grounded, and I say that the thing that keeps me going is not the industry or the movies, it's my love for my wife and her love for me. And so I am the message here is not marry your producer, but it could be. You know what I'm saying? It could be. But know yourself before marrying your producer. Anyway, that's another panel. But so I think in terms of like, where does funding come from? I think the first step is, what are you dreaming of? What do you want to make? What is the story you're trying to tell? My path to being a filmmaker is really circuitous. Like, I lived in Chicago a long time. I was a lawyer for 2 years and 8 months. Not that I counted. And I still am paying off that law school debt because I'm like, somebody's going to forgive it. Right? One day. But the thing is I left that because I was like, I started as an actor. Then I started writing because there were no roles for me as an actor. Then I started eventually directing. But the way I made, because I had no money and I didn't go to school for this, was I just started meeting people. And we made with $0 to begin with, right? And it was, I don't know, the phones weren't as good in 2012 and 2010, but I was like, oh, you're a DP, and we met at a thing, and you like the kinds of stories I want to tell, and I told you about this idea I have, and you're into it. Oh, and this person over here is an editor and does color and is like a one-stop post house. And so we all kind of teamed up, and then we found a location that they were like, sure, you can use this bar when it's not open for free. So truly $0 in just our sweat equity. That was how it began. And I was actually telling one of our friends who's on the next panel that earlier, I think yesterday I was saying this, it's that I actually had to eventually unwind in my writing from that because I had to be like, oh, I can write in locations I don't already have? It's amazing. But like, that was how I funded it, with just my people, with my community. There was no money. And it's true, it's not all deemed worthy, it's not all great. And so now I have this feature that's my directorial debut feature, and people are like, where did you come from? And I'm like, I've been here. You know, it's just been making these weird things that maybe didn't sort of climb to the top or, you know, rise to the top in that sort of way. But I learned from it, and I have a body of work. And you do have to make things that are true to you. You know, no matter what anybody is doing, tell the story. The funding, if you focus on the funding, you sometimes forget about yourself. And so if you're just sort of building relationships, obsessed and committed to your story, eventually others will come to you, or you will find them, or you will end up in an elevator with a person, or you will, you know, our film has, you know, we're lucky because we're also Canadian, so there is a system of funding in Canada. But I didn't find that until 2017 when Andrea told me about it. So for years I was just like, I raised $5,000 on Kickstarter. Like, that was my first web series made for $5,000 or whatever, like that kind of thing, or applying for grants. But otherwise, it was commitment to you, to your story, and just making that, being really unwavering about who you are. And I think for me, it's like, I know, I'm so sorry, I'm talking a lot here, but it's just like, I am able to make now because I know who I am. So when someone says to me, I don't know if that's a Muslim story, and I'm like, yes, it is. It is, and you don't have to buy into that, but my queer story and my journey is a Muslim story. Or somebody might be like, that's not queer, and I'm like, it's queer in design. It's queer because it's like breaking form. And so somebody might argue with me, and I'm like, I don't need to, I know who I am. So there's that knowing who you are and why you do things. That's just as important as any of this other stuff.
That was fantastic. That's exactly, wow. I also do want to say your 2015 short, The First Session, plays on repeat at my home. I love it so much. All of your shorts are incredible. Everyone's
I appreciate you.
are awesome. I saw so many hands go up when we asked about filmmakers in the crowd.
Yes.
We can open to questions from the crowd.
Yeah.
If anyone feels comfortable yet. Are you pointing for them? All right. Well, if not, there is space for that. You're welcome to ask questions. The panel, as I struggle with the mic. So sorry, everyone. Day 11. day 11, really feeling it. I'd love to hear about the inspiration that you all have for the film that you have now on the circuit and how it came.
You can start. I'll start. This actually maybe comes a little bit also off of what Fozzie was saying, what we were all saying about funding is my film was kind of an accident that we made this feature film, and I think that's true of everything. It's like I'm focused on the stories I want to tell, and then you know, it's sort of you can't foresee where and how everything's going to play out. You just have to have your conviction and know that you have a story to tell and find a way to tell it, which is what we did. My good friend, Lady Camden, was someone that I fell in love with years ago when I first saw him do drag. And I knew him as this ballet dancer. I was also a ballet dancer. In my past life, I was a ballet dancer as well. So we knew each other from the dance community. And I remember going to this drag show for my friend, and she had brought some other friends with her to do the show, and Lady Camden came on stage. I remember being like, holy crap, what is that? It is different. It is next level. That is something that I'm really interested in. And I went and I just was like, let's make stuff together. Let's do things. And we started just doing things. And then the pandemic happened. And then she got on Drag Race, and she went and nearly won it, right? She was the runner-up, and I couldn't foresee any of that, right? But I just was following my heart about, like, I love working with this person. We have stories we want to tell together, and then the universe kind of put everything together, and I think that I was in a place, we were making all these short films to go with her season. We made all these cool music videos and short films, which you should definitely check out because they're fun as hell, on her YouTube and her Instagram. And in the process of that, I was like, I think we did an interview for one of them where I asked him why he liked to do ballet. Why do you dance? And it was the first time we had a really intimate conversation about our past. And in that moment, I realized, holy crap, his story is so much bigger than a reality TV competition show. And it's so much more powerful and inspiring, and there's a way to tell this story more intimately and in a way that maybe has more impact. And so I picked up my camera and I just kept recording after we made all of our short films. I just kept recording and searching for what was gonna happen, and found it along the way.
My story, with Chasing Amy goes back to childhood. So effectively, I was a closeted queer trans kid living in suburban Kansas, and things were not great for me. It was a really hard time growing up there. I would say pretty aggressive, malicious bullying was what I dealt with. That was homophobic and definitely transphobic, even if I didn't know I was queer or trans yet. And so what ended up happening is just because I loved cinema, I went down a movie rabbit hole, and the movie that provided me a lot of comfort and was a life raft to me was Kevin Smith's film Chasing Amy. And it was the first time that I felt that I had seen like fully interesting, dimensional queer characters that weren't the butt of the joke, and nothing bad happened to them at the end of the movie because they were queer. And so that became a life raft to me, and I just watched it obsessively. And so when I was coming out of film school and thinking about what I wanted my first feature to be, I wanted to tell a story that only I could tell. And I knew that there was something there with the LGBTQ community and Chasing Amy, because if you're not aware, it does not have the best reputation among a lot of LGBTQ people, to say the least, specifically among queer women, because of, a lot of politics in the film, but including the fact that Kevin Smith is a straight cisgender man, who, as a result of the times in which Chasing Amy was released, this became mainstream lesbian representation when, it's not. And so I thought there was an interesting thing to explore there, and I knew that I had my personal story, and nobody could tell me that I was wrong about how I felt about Chasing Amy. And so as we kind of started this anthropological exploration of Chasing Amy, it became this really personal documentary that involved me, coming out as trans and all of these different things, and became this personal journey, and it was really just like allowing the story to unfold. And I got what I wanted, for better or for worse, a story that only I could tell. And that was just my instinct there, just wanting to make something unique that, you know, I wouldn't get scooped by another documentary filmmaker in a couple of years, because it's like, oh, we had more access to you than you did the whole time, right? Like HBO wasn't going to scoop me on it. And so I'm really proud of the work that we did. It was like 5 years of my life. It's still going as we're, you know, approaching distribution and trying to have those conversations. And I hope y'all can join tonight. It'll be fun.
I think I already sort of shared a short film. The short film that I made was called The Queen of My Dreams. It was, I actually, when I was trying to make it, for about a year and a half, I was trying to figure out if I could be queer and Muslim and still love Bollywood romance. Like, that was my sort of personal struggle. And so it was a very public short film about a really private struggle. But it was before I knew I was a filmmaker, so I was actually trying to make I'd shot all this footage, and it was gonna be a live gallery performance piece, is what I was envisioning. And then a friend of mine saw it, a guy named Ryan Logan, and he's like, I think you have a movie here. And he had been challenged to make a 3-minute short film by another festival programmer, so he's like, let's make a 3-minute short film. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So we made this 3-minute short film together. And honestly, for me, that's, you know, it's the reality of the cliche, right? Like, film saved my life. Making that short film saved my life, because I didn't have an answer to whether I could have all those identities at the same time until I made that movie and until I shared that film with other people. And I realized, you know, I sort of was basically working out the trauma through film. And then by sharing it at festivals, I saw that there was a need out there. And at the time, even now, there's really not a lot of queer or trans Muslim representation in indie film in Hollywood. And so at the time, you know, again, 2012, like, we weren't as online. And so I didn't see anybody. So I was like, well, I guess I just have to keep making shit, you know, so that I can see a way for me to thrive. I just didn't see it, you know, and it's also a cliche. Like, you have to see it to be able to believe that it's possible, but like, that is my reality. And so I kept making shorts, and then eventually I worked with a company in Chicago who helped me develop my short into a 1-person play that I performed in a couple countries and in Pakistan in 3 cities, and it also changed my life. And that was a very, very personal story about my relationship with my mother, because let's be honest, a lot of trauma is rooted in our parents or our perception of our parents and our ancestors. And so that was really life-changing for me. And then I made another feature in the meantime, and then I started thinking about this play as a feature film. And you know, really, I think meeting Andrea was a big step, because she sort of took me into this path of, I think we can find some funding in Canada for this. And so that's the story. The feature is definitely a bit of a fantasy, and a not as close to the adaptation. It's not as close to the play, but it's loosely inspired.
And on that inspiration note too, something that I find really fascinating about, like, the process of filmmaking, especially when, you know, you're a writer director and we have like close creative collaborators on this project, is like, when we were in post on this film, so we shot it in 2022, we shot it in Pakistan, we shot it in Canada. It was a very, very long production process. And we were in post, and we were like working through, for folks that have seen the film, it has like a non-linear structure, and there's like different time periods and jumping around. And so the edit was a very like hands-on creative edit of moving pieces around. And there was this kind of piece we couldn't crack with like the opening of the film. Like, we just sort of couldn't figure it out. And what actually brought us to the place of finishing the film was going back to the short film from 2012. We were like, there's something missing and we can't put our fingers on it. And it was this element that the short had that we had never brought into the feature, but we went all the way back to it and found it and then incorporated that into the film. So sometimes that spark of inspiration like shows up in a very literal way, and sometimes it's more in your body or in your creative flow to a project. But I think this one was a really interesting example of how like that initial spark of inspiration was with us all the way through.
Yeah, for Sav, Luke, and for Angelo, our documentary filmmakers, you did the thing. You made the film. It's out in the world. Do you ever feel like, oh, I want to put one more touch on this? How did you know that you were finished? How did you know you were finished? Yeah.
My producing partner actually does keep a list, and I think she does it just to appease me, because like every screening and every festival we go to, I'm like, oh shit, I wanted to edit that part too. I want to make a change there. And she's like, I'll write it down. I don't think she does. I think she just tells me she does. My mentors and professors love to say, you never finish a film. It just eventually gets taken away from you. And I think that what I was thinking about when Fozzie was talking too is this, you have to see it to believe it. There's something like when you're really focused on the story and telling the story and the work of getting that, like getting it right, finding every little moment, you sort of, you have these moments where you step back and you look at the big, you only step back like every so often. And when you step back, you are like, what's kind of amazing is to be like delightfully surprised and be like, oh, I think we made a movie. Like, wow, I didn't realize that. I was just so focused on like, how do we tell the story? And so I think that, yes, I always want to make changes. But I also have to like step back and realize I can make those changes on the next project, and that like I did make something cool here, and I did achieve something, and the story is being told really well. Yeah.
I love not being precious. I think it's a gift to the world to not be precious, because your shit ain't that special. Like, I think like we get really caught up in thinking that what we bring to the table is particularly special, and like it's not, and it is only in the fact that so is what everyone else brings to the table. And so the more you can let go of the idea that like what you have is particularly precious, the more you can actually offer a viewer. And I think there's a lot to be said about not getting it taken away, but letting it go. Like, letting it fucking go. Like, it's not gonna be perfect. Nothing you do is gonna be perfect. And probably, like, not to do this again, but, like, like, a lot of things you do are not gonna be good. And, like, that's just the way it is, even if you've, like, given it everything you have. And so, I don't know, just, like, there's not gonna be, like, the one decision you make that's gonna, like, change everything about this project. So just let it go.
Because I'm in the movie and didn't want to be in the movie, I couldn't wait for it to be over. It was really challenging for a couple of reasons. One, I transitioned on camera, was not planning on doing that. Was not planning on preserving like parts of myself for everybody to see for all of the rest of time that I wouldn't choose to document on Instagram, let alone in a movie. But I chose to preserve the storytelling aspect to make it feel like the most authentic version of the movie versus things that just like felt embarrassing to me. And, going through second puberty in front of everybody is embarrassing. So sorry. But also like, it's a lot more fun to watch other people come of age rather than to watch yourself come of age. It feels safer to do that in a narrative context where, oh, it's not you, it's somebody else. It could be inspired by you. But to watch yourself do it, it sucks. And so, I'm really proud of the film that we have. I couldn't wait for it to be over in that sense. But I'm like happy that it's done. But I had to wait for life to like catch up to all of the things that we were doing to find the natural ending. I couldn't force it to be done sooner. So I would not go back and change a frame of the film just because I would then not want the film to be out there in like a personal sense. But also like I'm really proud of the work that we did. It was 5 years of work with like hundreds of people working on it. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
I think you both touched on something too, that like the idea that a film is not precious, ideas are not precious, like your ideas are not precious. Other people's ideas are just as valuable. And I take with me something that Rachel Ramis said to me. She's a phenomenal TV director, and there was this cool mentoring session I got to do with her, and she said she runs her sets with the motto, best idea wins. And I start every project I do with that mindset, best idea wins. I am trying to tell a great story. I have a lot of other people that also want to tell this great story, and they are all incredibly talented, and I'm excited to grow, to put myself in an uncomfortable place, to find the best way to tell the story. And I also feel like we've all been talking about this a little bit too, is that our inspirations are our own healing and growth, and somehow it allows us to make work that can be healing and offering inspiration, hope, and healing to others, which is also why I want to say thank you so much for being part of your own film and being in your own film and sharing that story, because it is so much easier to watch someone else's story, you have made so many lives so much easier by doing the uncomfortable thing. And it's really incredible. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about that. Just don't be precious. Best idea wins.
And your idea?
None. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that for the people that don't really have creative spirit, know that when we sit in the theater and the lights go down and your precious project comes up and we get to escape for 2 hours, thank you for doing what you do, because the audience is just as important as the creatives. But we're there to support you, and we love seeing your preciousness. And Angelo, I didn't know you were going to be here today. I don't think you were on the Facebook thing. But was that last year that your film was here? The current? It was 2 years ago. 2 years ago? Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Oh my God, that was a tough time to watch your film on a Sunday morning. Loved it. It was the best. Jack, you're the best. You are incredible at your job. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everything. The shorts this year were the best of all the years. So keep on doing your amazing work.
Thank you. Yeah, also, Angela, I'll say, as well, we're being vulnerable and being out there. I will say that seeing it, North by Current, completely changed the relationship that I have with my brother and improved it in so many different ways, where we got to have conversations that we hadn't in a long time. So thank you so much for putting yourself out there. And sort of what have you seen lately that's inspired you, and what things do you want to see more of in queer cinema? Thoughts and feelings.
I am inspired by students in New York protesting on their campus. I'm inspired by TikTok. You know what I mean? Like, there's something that happens where it's like, your references and your inspiration has to be, again, I didn't go to film school, I learned by like watching people's work and reading scripts and watching movies and having conversations and doing and not doing so well, like all of those things. But seeing how people are able to just put themselves out there, whether it's in a kitchen on TikTok, in their car trying the 10 best chicken sandwiches, being a TikTok detective who's like, I figured out who so-and-so is dating. Like, there's so many, I'm just like, wow, you're just able to create. It's this constant level of creation. And I know it can also be overwhelming, but there's also something that can be freeing about embrace the form, embrace whatever form you want to make and whatever form your storytelling takes. Like, that is queer. That, it's not just about like who is at the center of the story. It's embracing the form, and it's multi-genre. I think that is something that I've really been thinking a lot about is, I am not one thing. Why does my work have to be just one thing? And that, of course, is because of capitalism. But, how do we sort of just be really connected to our truth and our inspiration? So, yeah, and of course, there's lots of movies I'm inspired by. Like, I look at Andrea because she knows my brain better than me. What's a movie I've been inspired by? Oh, the Romanian film. do not expect too much from The End of the World, which is playing at the festival. Also, Challengers with Zendaya. It's really good. I just want you to know, go watch it when you can. It's really good. And it's so queer. And Trent Reznor is doing the score. And it's again, it's a reminder of what movies can, like, it's a very indie film in a very mainstream package. And it's so queer. So I don't know, that's inspiring as well. And I'm inspired by my wife every day.
I'm just here for compliments. If anyone else wants to send a little love this way. Yeah, love it. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm a Pisces. What do you want? I'm a Pisces.
We're driven by emotion. I actually was so privileged at this festival. I got to be on the jury for the Luminaries program, which, like, y'all, because we've been traveling with this film, I haven't seen as much else going on the festival circuit. And, like, I was so blown away by the films in that program this year. That Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, which Fazia mentioned, which is a Romanian film, a commentary on capitalism, and it just, like, blew me away. La Chimera, starring Josh O'Connor, one of my favorite young actors, who was in a great queer film called God's Own Country a few years ago. A lot of stuff that's happening in, like, short form, like a lot of cool queer filmmakers that are coming up in the moment, and just, like, again, like Fazia said, really messing with, like, form and function and trying new approaches. That always really inspires me. I feel like there was something else we saw recently too that I wanted to shout out, but yeah, my brain is, it'll come back to me. Here's, have you go.
Let's see. I've been called an assimilationist for this take, so excuse me. But I'd like to see trans people having fun once in a while. That's what I'd like to see. I don't know how that makes me an assimilationist, but I like, could one trans comedy exist? Like one? So for context, looking at the industry from a top level down, there's never been a studio film greenlit with a trans protagonist, like main character, ever. The cinema's been around for 100 years. Am I wrong on that stat? Great, love being right. And so... Yes. Well, Alex Schmitter's not here, so I have to turn to someone. And so I would just, I grew up, like, watching a lot of, like, commercial films, and that's kind of my taste, is, like, I'd like to be able to do a comedy. I'd love to be greenlit to do a comedy. And so I don't think it's too much to ask. It's like, hey, could one of you, just one film? One film where we get to have fun and it's not about the worst things that have ever happened to us. But honestly, we're having this really great moment where specifically trans filmmakers are out there telling their stories and doing it in, like, this really unique way where they're just doing it from their own point of view, whether that includes fun or drama or genre. I mean, The People's Joker is in theaters right now. Congratulations to Vera on that. Alice Mayo Mackey is, like, a 19-year-old Australian filmmaker. She's a trans woman who's made 3 feature films at this point. There are so many incredible films by trans filmmakers coming out right now, and so I'm just excited to keep watching those and for the Trans Film Center to keep supporting that work. We're giving out $100,000 in grant support this year for artist development, and that's what I'm stoked about. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I think I would just circle back to their first question about what it is to be a queer filmmaker in 2024, and I love being a part of a generation of queer filmmakers that are so focused on creating queer heroes and queer joy and making the movies that we needed as kids. As a gay boy in the Deep South in the 90s, I needed so many of the films that I'm seeing right now, and I just think how fucking awesome sorry I said the F word, how fucking awesome it is for kids nowadays to be able to go and see all of this incredible joy and to see these stories that I longed for and craved so much as a kid, and I just love that. I also am very inspired for the past month or so since I started this festival run with my film. I have been making a film. It has been insanely consuming, all-consuming. I've been very focused, and now I'm going to these festivals, and I've been steeped in LA, and LA has been unpleasant for the past year. There's been a lot of discontent, a lot of frustration and anger in the industry, and things are collapsing under our feet, it feels like, when you're in LA talking to other people in the industry. And then you come to a festival like Milwaukee, where Jack is doing the work he's doing in Milwaukee, and it's like, and you hear audience members talk about how important it is to see these films, and you go to these gorgeous movie theaters that are being maintained by the Milwaukee Film Festival, and I think, holy crap, cinema lives. And I am so inspired to see so many people around the world, in Miami and Milwaukee and Minnesota and Winston-Salem, doing, keeping cinema alive and celebrating it and sharing stories. And I find that so inspiring. So thank you, Milwaukee Film Festival, for doing that.
Thank you, Luke.
I have one thing to say about Queer Joy. And that is, I'm all for it in theory. I think in practice, especially in media and film, we have this tendency to really gloss shit because we only have an hour and a half, right? So there's a way in which the language of cinema is inarticulate and cannot do the job that other forms can do that are very complicated, multi-layered, nuanced. So sometimes films are put in a position where the thing has to be bashed over its head right away without giving us any kind of grace. And my issue with the way Queer Joy has been addressed on film is that it becomes a replacement for suffering, as opposed to a complement to suffering or some kind of buffer. What am I trying to say? Human suffering is what storytelling is based on, Greek tragedy, whatever. But suffering is one of the ways that we find the most connection with each other and with our humanness and with our fallibilities and with our flaws and with the ways in which we are all kind of bad. Shadow self, seriously. Those are, the shadow self is the most important thing you will ever explore in your life, are the darkest parts of yourself are what you want to go into to really understand the world. And if we leave those out, we're left with this, with a shitty Hallmark card. And I do not want the shitty Hallmark card. So I want the joy, I do. I also want it to be coupled with all the complexity that is livelihood, and that is being human, which is a lot of it ain't fun. And I think the balance is just figuring out how to cultivate joy within that and not negate it, because honestly it does have serious political implications for our lives. And so, yeah.
I'm going to bounce off that for a second. I've never said we can't have suffering on screen for trans people or for queer people. However, I'm interested in making stuff that's imaginative and a bit daffy and fun. I'd love to see queer people in things like The Truman Show, or which I think is a horrifying premise, but done in this beautiful, beautiful human exploration. I'd love to see queer people in things like Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. You know what I mean? I think that's a pretty queer. Right, exactly. It's a pretty queer-coded movie, and when I talk about Queer Joy, I'm not interested in the Hallmark version of our lives. But I think it would be fun to see us have fun once in a while. I'm not pedagogical in the way that I try to talk about filmmaking. I talk about what works best for me. And that's an opportunity I'd like to have, is to just explore some of the fun that comes with being queer and trans, because I know a lot of great people as a result of it. I love the communities I'm in. And I think there's so much suffering in the world. I'm not really interested in exploring more of that in my work. I'd like for my work to be an escape sometimes. But also in terms of just even modeling, let's think about films with a trans kid coming out, for example. If the only thing modeled in media is that when a trans kid comes out, a parent is supposed to be defensive or ask a bunch of questions that are kind of dehumanizing. like people don't know that they can be accepting. They don't know what they've never seen before. And so I love this opportunity that we're having right now as independent filmmakers, as storytellers, to be able to look at what life could be, to model what life could be, the world that we wish that we lived in. That's what I'm really interested in exploring in my work narratively, but also as a documentarian, finding those pockets of the unexamined life and trying to enjoy that a little bit. So there's room for everybody, but I'm all for trying something different. And in 100 years of cinema, we really haven't gotten this perspective. Yeah. I think it's time.
Well, and you know what's so fascinating is I feel like that's really the world we're fighting for, right? Is for all of us to thrive in the way that, and make movies and tell stories and in the way that we need, right? And I think what's happened is that we're often all put into one box and expected to be that one thing. And, you know, we're sort of fighting to find something else outside of that box. So, I mean, I think the dream world, the protopia, is probably one where everyone here is able to thrive, making the films about suffering and the films about the joy and the rom-com and the drag queen film and it's sort of like all is sort of celebrated and fun, or whether it's funded or not funded, but it's like that world exists and we're not just all like one gay film, one trans film, like that is that is inherently the problem. And when we're all more than one thing. And so you're often sort of like, there can only be one way to represent that. And we think we're past that, but like really we're only past that in bubbles. We're really not past that. And so that's a thing that we really have to work on and think about and preach and practice as well. I mean, something that I've been thinking a lot about, and it's something I'm also learning, is that there is a stereotype of the Arab man. Just the way there was a stereotype of the indigenous man or woman. And that has been perpetuated by media for years, that the Arab man is a scary guy with these big eyes, and he's got a big scary knife, and he looks like he's going to eat your children. And that it's been probably 60 plus years that trope has been shared in Western community and media and movies, and we didn't even know it. You know, I think people thought, oh, 9/11 is the thing that did it, but it's been happening for years, and now finally we're like, oh my God, this is deep. How do we fight against this? We have to change this, and that's gonna take years. And so that's just one group of people, right? Like we know the stereotype of all of our communities in this room, right? And so we do need that representation. We just need it and crave it. So it's, I don't know, it's exciting to, I don't know, it'll be fun and exciting to hear about the kinds of things that y'all as filmmakers are like thinking about and dreaming about and working on. And that is all going to be part of these conversations in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Will have changed culture and media as well.
I love this. I love challenging the language we use. I think we get into habits of like picking up phrases, and I love diving in deeper. And I think that I also like exactly what you said about queer joy is partly why I have adopted the phrase queer heroes, because I do think that while I think we could go deeper, and I think that like we could say queer joy can come from watching suffering of someone who shares a lived experience that we have. So like joy can be bigger than just being happy in a comedy. It can be that I experience a great deal of catharsis by watching someone else like me suffer something similar to me. And that's why I think that it's really queer heroes that we need, queer protagonists. It's this idea that like there are people like me that have stories like me, and I get to experience them cathartically on the big silver screen, you know. Anyway, I love having the conversation about like challenging the language we use, and I could talk for hours about it.
I want all of it though. I want I want queer villains as well. I want like all of the shades of it, every version of every story that we want to see. All of the films that you have all made were selected for the festival because of how authentic they were to your experiences. And so for that, I have to wrap up with one last question because we do have another conversation to get to at a different theater. But I want to talk about what you're up to next, and then we can stick around for conversations after. But Fozzie and Andrea and I, we gotta go after this one. So what is next for you?
Well, I really hope it's my first narrative feature, not doc. I have two. I have my previous short film. I have that developed into a feature. It is a wonderful story about a trans person and a boy who thought he was a straight white boy and accidentally falls in love with someone and goes through the journey of figuring out how to love them the way they deserve to be loved. And so that's one. And then I also have a feature with Lady Camden that we wrote about her and her appearing in San Francisco out of a dumpster explosion and enlisting the help of a young boy and his mother to help her find her way home to Camden. But in the end, she realizes that San Francisco was home all along.
Ushering new projects through development, working on some narrative stuff right now, working on some doc pitches. You know, it's a weird time in Hollywood. Can we do this as a job? I hope so. And also just continuing to fundraise for the Trans Film Center and trying to give out more money. That's what's next.
I want to shout out a couple doc projects we have. We have a completed doc that's on the festival circuit called Coming Around, which is again a mother-daughter story, which, you know, we love. It's about a queer Muslim scholar in New York and her complicated relationship with her mother. It won the Audience Award at New Fest this past year, and so keep an eye out for that one. And then we have a doc in post-production called Survivor Made, which is made with a whole team of survivors of intimate partner violence in LA that are starting their own businesses as entrepreneurs, and so that's going to be coming out this year too, and then raising money for ours and other projects.
What she said, and also something we're really interested in doing is like at whatever stage you're at, we're able to like help others. You know, we do have information, even when we think we don't, we have information and access. So we're executive producing a couple short films from filmmakers whose work really matters. We think they're like exciting voices and doing work that's really connected to our values and mission. And so that's exciting. One of them was just shot in March, and another one's gonna shoot in New York in April. And another one shoots this summer. Yeah. So that's cool. And I think finding longevity. This is a job, and I don't want to go back to being a lawyer because that'll actually be really hard because I have years of credits I'd have to make up. Anyway, it'll be complicated, and I'm not a great lawyer. So, yes, I just directed on my first TV show, which will, thank you so much. I did an episode on a new Hulu show called Deli Boys. That'll come out probably in the fall. So yeah, that plus other movie stuff. But there's so much to do. There's so much to do.
And we've got another Q&A to go to in a little bit. Angela, anything that you want to add to close out?
I don't know. I'm working on 3 or 4 shorts. I just wrapped on a short that's going to be premiering at Inside Out, and then Sheffield Doc Fest in UK and a bunch of other stuff this summer and fall. Post on a new doc called A Body to Live In that will come out 2025. I'm also a college professor, so that's where I come from in this landscape. If that's helpful for anyone. Couple of art shows. Yep, lots of things. Always things to do.
And we'll see you there for all of it. Again, folks, welcome to stick around. We do have to go, but also please be mindful of your filmmakers' times as well if they have to go to other places. And please join me in thanking them for their time on this panel. Thank you so much, and thank you all so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of the festival.